Welcome back to a brand new episode of Smoke Screen Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Johnson, and today, as you can see it, man, we're live, man. We're here with Nikki Fried, the Florida Democratic Chair Party, man. How you doing, Nikki? How you doing
Hi,
tonight?
good. I'm good. I'm so glad to be back on the show. It's been way too long.
Yeah, it has, man. It has. What have you been up to since last we spoke was 2022, I think, or 2023. It was 2023, beginning of the year
Beginning of
last
the
year.
year. So what have I been up to since then? Let's see, taking a ship that hit the iceberg and trying to take it out of the iceberg, redirect it, and get us back into moving in the right direction. So really, that's what the last year and a half has been. It is really rebuilding the not only the infrastructure of the Florida Democratic Party, but really changing the way people feel about the Democratic Party, the image of the party. So we've changed our logo, we've changed our mascot, we changed how we fight. We're out there registering voters and getting into our communities and showing fight again and pushing back against all of the Republican just insanity here in the state of Florida. So have been on the front lines, got myself arrested. I think that was before I talked to you. So I got myself arrested last year for protesting the 6-week abortion ban here in Florida. So that there was front pictures of me wearing a shirt that says "Just effing vote," so I've been a little busy since last time we chatted.
I know I don't want to jump around too much, but one thing I do like is who was that with you that got arrested? I forgot
Lauren,
her name. It's slipping
Lauren,
my mind.
Lauren Book, are you talking about our Senate Minority Leader?
Exactly.
Lauren Book,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I love how all y'all get along and y'all are working together, man. You can really, if you pay attention, you can really see the Florida Democratic Party is all on one page.
Yeah, but Brandon wasn't always like that. Like if you look back at iterations of previous, not just party, but leaders in the party, there's always been turf wars. There's always, and we haven't been winning. And so it's like, what are you fighting over? Your little, fiefdom over here and your little kingdom over here. And so it really was a big part of my coming into this position and saying the inner fighting has to stop. Just because one person's star rises doesn't mean that everybody else's comes down. We all can rise together, and there's enough space for all of our egos to be at the table. But it really is, in order for us to be able to bring back democracy here in Florida and create balance, everybody's got to take a little bit of a backseat to that democratic message. And that means that we all have to come together. We all have to play our parts, whether that's in the legislature or that's up in DC or that's me as the party, that we all have a part to play. And in order for us to start winning again, we have to come together.
So just to lighten up the mood a little bit, I know you're a Gator fan. You ready for the football season this year?
Nah, I am. If you see behind me, I am a true Gator, like orange and blue. Like I've got 3 degrees from the university. I have a student body president there. I'm still on some of their law school trustee boards. Our first game is against Miami, and we haven't in the last few seasons that we've played each other haven't always fared well. So I will die a Gator fan. I will always be rooting for my Gators, but I have hopes. But hopes don't give us a winning season. So,
Hey, if you ever want to switch sides, you can come over to FAMU, man, and you can come to FAMU. We'd love to have you up at Bragg, man, for a game or two this year.
And I do love the FAM alumni. The Rattlers were all over my administration as Commissioner of Agriculture, as our other land grant university. So mad pride and respect for the Rattlers. And so, of course, living here in Tallahassee, I thought you were going to say something about FSU because that is
no,
that is not a ship I will ever jump on. I actually have a funny story about this. My dad went to FSU. So I grew up in Miami when all my friends were doing this. I was doing this, followed a boy to start doing this. But my dad, until I became student body president of UF, did he buy a Gator Dad bumper sticker? Didn't put it on the car. Put it inside of his office so he could see it, but nobody else. And so I think it was FSU was playing, I think it was either Auburn or Alabama for the national championship, kind of like 10, 15 years ago. And my dad turned to me and goes, well, can I finally get your support for this one? I was like, Dad, you're playing an SEC team. No, man.
No winning for you, buddy. Yeah.
No win here.
With Nikki, man. So last time we talked, you became the Democratic Party chair. Now, I know you spoke about a little bit in the beginning, man. How large has your workload been this past year and a half?
Tremendously large. And I say this, and I don't say this for any other reason, but just so that the crown is heavy. It is really heavy knowing what is on the line, knowing how elections impact the people in our communities. And it's not just, what you see on TV and you read in the papers, but policies that actually really, truly impact the future of our state and the future of our country. And I understand that burden. And it's not even a burden, but I understand that responsibility. And so we have inside the party become truly the center of gravity for all things Democrats here in the state of Florida. And that means that my workload gets really, really, I don't have weekends. I, work in from first moment I wake up in the morning till, eyes close at night, and every day goes on like that. Because it's working with our local parties and our local party chairs, our local clubs and our caucuses, our statewide candidates, our local, all of our candidates, our electeds, our donors, our activists, the national stage. There is just a lot that goes on a pretty consistent basis in politics. And certainly as we're getting closer to the November elections, it's a lot. It's a lot. My phone is consistently ringing, and every call is completely different than the one previous and will be afterwards. I'm dealing with legal issues and challenging of things that are happening at the polls to, just before we got on here, I was having a conversation with the DNC staffer that is in charge of the state party chairs. And so every day is just a new conversation and in trying to get us through not just this election, but we are really trying to build an infrastructure that is going to last for 24, 26, 28, 30, 26. We have an open governor and cabinet. 28, we have another, Mark goes back up for reelection, and then 30 is redistricting. And so putting together that plan and getting everybody to buy in on that plan is definitely not an easy voyage by any stretch of the imagination.
Gotcha. Now you may be a victim of proximity with the former president being a resident of Florida and the governor running for president. But do you feel like you the spokesperson kind of for the country, really, the Democratic Party sometimes? Because all eyes on Florida at all times.
That's the argument that I at least make, and I literally just made that argument to the DNC. Is that really? And I've said this consistently, whether it's on local podcasts and statewide podcasts to national media, that if we're going to fight back against the MAGA extremism, you got to come to Florida, the belly of the beast, where we've got Trump and we've got DeSantis and we've got Rick Scott and we've got Matt Gaetz and we've got all of this here in the state of Florida. That the founders of Moms for Liberty is here in the state of Florida. The book banning started here. The whitewashing of Black history, that all comes from Florida. 6-week abortion ban in what has always been a very purple libertarian state. So yeah, all eyes are always going to be on Florida because of the policies that are coming out from here. The most diverse state in the nation. We've got close to 1.5 million Haitians that live in our state. We have a tremendously large Hispanic population, from everything from Cuba to Venezuela to even to Puerto Rico, and just the amount of just diversity here in the state. And so they have to message test here. So yeah. So when I'm talking about what is happening here in the state of Florida and the extremism that's happened here into our state and what the Republicans have done to this state, on some days I do feel like I'm, holding the banner and holding the stick and the flag for the Democratic Party, not just for Florida, but for across the country. And I hear that, as I travel the entire country, and I'm hearing from party chairs everywhere from Maine to Washington to California and everything in between. And they see the fight, the grit that is coming from Florida Democrats. They see our comeback. They're rooting for us, and we're inspiring them, that they feel that if we can come back after what happened here in November of 2022, if we are able to come back and we're able to show fight and start seeing these electoral wins, we're inspiring the nation. And I even hear from people that have family overseas, whether it's in the Latin Americas or even, as far as Europe, who are saying that they're watching what's happening in Florida Democratic politics. And that gets my team more energized, but also the recognition that we've got to be pitch perfect. Every single statement that comes out of the Florida Democratic Party, every single messaging guidance has to be so carefully drafted because so many eyes are on what we are doing here.
Has the reception been welcomed across the country when you go and speak different places?
Yeah, people are excited about what we've done here. Again, getting arrested. I don't know another state party chair in this cycle, at least, that has been arrested for standing up for our values and what we believe in. But yeah, and they come up to us on a pretty consistent basis. And when I'm in big rooms, I'll tell you a small story. We have every few months, we have all the chairs from across the entire country that come together with our DNC counterparts and, of course, lots of vendors that come and pitch us on all their newest products. But when I'm in those rooms and I'm standing up and asking a question, and I was asking one and I was introducing myself. Hi, I'm Nikki Fried from the once again battleground state of Florida, and the entire room erupts. Um, and I think that is really the spirit of what it means to be a Democrat, not just here in Florida, but across the country. One, we root for those underdogs. We root for the team that is putting in the fight and the passion behind it. And again, seeing wins. And so, yeah, we're getting a lot of great reception, and a lot of national donors are paying back attention to what is happening here on the ground. They're not giving up on Florida. It took some time. It took some time and some convincing and showing those milestones of success. But we're getting there.
I know you spoke about it a little bit, but internationally as well is all welcome
All
when you go
welcome.
overseas.
All welcome because as opposed to what Donald Trump wants to say, we have been a national and international embarrassment under a Trump administration. We are. I traveled to Europe during the Trump years, and people will be like, "Oh, you're from America? You got President Trump there." And the facial expressions told the story. And then if I'm traveling or hearing from people like, "Oh, how do you deal with DeSantis?" I mean, it's just like these reactions from people. And so us taking it to them and fighting back on them, we see a lot of positive support across the water as well.
You know, just to add a point, man. That's one thing that caught my eye. How you caught my eye was how you were handling the DeSantis when you were in that administration. You were standing up against everything that they wanted to go forward, and you were trying to stand up for it. Now I'm gonna ask you something about the state of Florida. Now you said we're going strong. What was the reasoning behind going with the Florida Panther?
So I don't know if you or your listeners, and I know probably the answer we know the story about the donkey. So the story, so a little bit of a history lesson for your viewers tonight. The donkey came from the presidential campaign of Andrew Jackson, not somebody necessarily that any of us would like to be associated with. And during that campaign, they called him a jackass. And so instead of being defensive, he leaned in. And so during that cycle, they started to create cartoons using the donkey in respect to Andrew Jackson, who was a Democrat, different version of Democrat than we have today, but still Democrat. And I just felt that is not who we as Florida Democrats are. That is not who the National Party is. But I have to take, first step is getting rid of here in Florida. And so we did. And so last year I did a call to action to our Democrats across the state. And I said, we're getting rid of the donkey. Come with ideas and suggestions. And the one that most resembled kind of us is the Panther. First and foremost, it is fierce. It is, it is a symbol of everything. Florida, when you think about Florida, you think about Panther, you think about manatees, Everglades, Disney, and citrus. Those are and our beaches, but those are the symbols that you always hear about Florida. And the Panther had been, getting very close to being extinct, and is still on the endangered species list, but is making a comeback. At one point, I think we had less than 100 for sure, may even been less than 50 Panthers in the state of Florida. And there was a lot of energy, resources, allotment of land that has to be protected, that is Panther land. And so the Panther is making a comeback. They also look for their praise and very strategic of how they go after their prey. And I just felt that just really embodies everything that Florida Democrats, that we are going to be laser focused, that we are making a comeback, that you may have counted us out and counted us endangered, but you're going to see we're going to be roaming free and multitude of Panthers in the near future.
And how does it work out that the Panthers win the hockey championship, man, the
You
Stanley Cup, man?
know?
Oh,
It's the year of the Panther, and so when you kind of wish things into existence,
yeah,
things happen.
that's amazing, man. Now, is there are other states thinking about changing their the party logo?
So one of my close friends is the Kentucky Party Chair, Coleman. And I was at one of those meetings I was talking about last year, and I turned to Coleman and I said, Coleman, I said, do you know the story of the Panther? I mean, of the donkey. He's like, I do, Nikki. And I said, we got to get rid of the donkey. And he's like, Kentucky already did. I said, you did? He's like, yeah. I said, what did you replace the donkey with? His answer was epic: a Democratic governor. And I said, got it. So there definitely is some movement, not overwhelming movement yet, but you get a couple of us chattering about it. And I actually, the chairman, Jamie Harrison of the DNC, was here a couple of weeks ago, and I said the same thing to him, and he was a little bit shocked because everybody gets a little territorial about their organizations, but he laughed and found a lot of appreciation for what we did.
That's wonderful, man. That's wonderful. Now, what's at stake this year? We're going to jump a little bit to the ballots and everything this year. What's at stake this year for the state of Florida?
Everything's at stake. We have, for the first time since Reconstruction, have no statewide elected Democrats, are in a super minority in both chambers. And because of that super minority, we have seen, again, the attacks on reproductive freedom. We have seen attacks on our higher education system. That's actually what ultimately had gotten me into this race, is the attacks on DEI at the higher education system. That's what made me who I am today. Is maybe that's why they're getting rid of it, but like the education both in the classroom and more importantly out of the classroom, to the 6-week abortion ban, to going after our workforce, to our immigration, to what we fund our public education system. I mean, just everything is on the line. How we deal with our environment, whether or not people want to believe that the climate is changing and whether or not humans have a role to play in here. We just got hit, not we, but a Cat 5 hurricane, July 2nd. And you're telling that this 1992 Andrew survivor that was in August, that things aren't happening in the atmosphere. And yes, the globe constantly is changing. Yes, we can go back to the dinosaurs and to the ice age. Sure. But humans have a role to play in the timing of when those impacts are happening. And here in Florida, there's no other state that has a greater, that the climate has a greater impact on, whether it's people coming and living here, whether it is our agriculture industry, which is second largest economic driver for the state, whether that's people going to our beaches, and our first economic driver is tourism. Second economic driver is agriculture, and third is construction. All of those have a huge role, has an impact from the environment, including property insurance, which is the number one issue for Floridians, is property insurance. And property insurers are not going to mitigate our risks if we are not willing to do it ourselves. So all of those things come into play about who we are and what the future of our state is. And so this election is an opportunity to, one, level set that we are not a 19-point state. That was a complete outlier. DeSantis didn't win by 19 points. Democrats lost by 19 points. We had over 1 million Democrats that did not show up in the November 2022 election. And if 1 million Democrats didn't show up, imagine how many left-leaning independents and PAs, which consists of almost 1/3 of our voting bloc in Florida now. And so we've got to make sure that we are showing not just Floridians, but the rest of the nation, that Florida is not 19-point state, that we have to start pulling back some of these powers that are coming from the Republican Party. DeSantis is completely unchecked, whether it's transparency, whether it is, the money that he spends on those migrant flights and not being willing to disclose the resources to getting, vetoing $32 million, I think was the number for arts and culture, which is everything from business development to economic development on the local level to people's job careers and paths that DeSantis is like, we're just not going to do that. That's a lot of just small-mindedness because he can. And so that's what's on the line this year. We've got Rick Scott, who's on the ballot. Rick Scott, and this is going to sound crazy because it is crazy. So of all the Republicans in the U.S. Senate, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, J.D. Vance, all of the insane MAGAs, Rick Scott is right of all of them, is more conservative than all of them, would have passed, would have signed a 6-week abortion ban here in the state of Florida, would in fact go after Social Security and Medicare, would support and does support a national abortion ban, going after IVF and contraception. Like, that's condoms and birth control. We have a U.S. senator who didn't vote to support condoms and birth control.
And his daughter used IVF is what, it blows my mind.
Blows our minds. And so we've got a chance to take him out, and to try to restore democracy, not just here in Florida, but make sure we maintain it across the country. And then, of course, we've got really important ballot initiatives on the ballot this year. And so there's a lot. And look, people might not be energized, but I would hope that people understand that. And I just had this conversation with my 13-year-old stepson yesterday. He's like, why does it matter to me? I said, all right, Finn, let me tell you why it matters. Do you want a state that you can breathe the air and enjoy our beaches when you're my age? Do you want to have an education system that your degrees are of value? Do you want to make sure that there's enough affordable homes that people can live, in the state of Florida? And so there's real policies that are impacting people's everyday lives, whether you're in the rural communities and you can't get this podcast because you don't have broadband, or that it may take you 2.5 hours if you're living in one of our rural communities to get to an emergency room, or an even OBGYN delivery room. So there's a lot that is on the line, and it's not just politics, but it's our quality and way of life. I mean, look, you're talking about FAMU. Did you see what happened last week? So we had a board of governors meeting last week, and every year, every university, state university, so those are all of our public universities, have to present to the board of governors of their strategic plan and their metrics. And last week, they came after FAMU, and I think there was 3 programs: law, nursing, and pharmacy.
I did see the law, yeah.
And said that they are underperforming in those areas. And maybe there's a conversation about actually eliminating those programs and those resources. That is a direct impact on us not voting for Democrats, that you've got DeSantis getting every single appointment to the board of governors and to our board of trustees for all of our universities. And those mean that those people are going to be like-minded to him and not coming from different perspectives of, hey, I don't know, our HBCUs have been underfunded since their conception, and you're not making this any better. And now you're almost harming them for not overperforming because we didn't give them enough resources to begin with. That's why it matters.
You were in administration. What's the what's the belief behind so I work for the state, but why doesn't the state, as far as help with IVF, what's their thought on not assisting with IVF if they're so big on and stopping abortion and having the babies? Why not assist with IVF?
I'm going to say something that's going to be totally off the cuff, because the people who financially can afford IVF are fine. The people that can't afford IVF, the white electeds don't want them to procreate.
That's cut plain dry, man. That's why we respect you, Nikki, man. That's cut plain dry. That's exactly what I was thinking what it was, but I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a reality. I mean, that's just, that's just the reality of the situation. And because you don't hear a lot of people in communities that don't have the financial resources to pay for IVF yelling and screaming, that it's, we still have two governments, we still have two countries, and we have two sets of laws. And the Supreme Court established that yesterday too, that we've got two ways that we look at justice. And, and until which time, and you have probably heard me say this before, and others have said this, and that I've said this very clearly, and a lot during the George Floyd's and the BLM conversations, is that us white electeds and politicians have an obligation and a moral that we need to stand up, and that what is affecting our minority communities affect all of us, and it's not enough for just our Black electeds to be the ones who are holding the entire bag of moving progress forward. It is all of us who have been able to be privileged enough to be in the roles that we are in, and have to use that in a way to make the world a better place. That has been my motto from the time that I was a child. We say in the Jewish religion, Tikkun olam, to heal the world, is now tattooed literally on my body, and that we have an obligation to consistently be giving back. And that doesn't mean giving back for our own kind, but for humankind. And it is time for white America to actually understand what is happening in our justice system, and what is happening in our laws, that the Republicans like to make this, oh, we're just trying to create a better, security system for our elections. Bullshit. You're trying to suppress Black and brown votes. Like, just say it out loud at this point, because that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, there was no problem with Florida's election process the past couple of years, but now you want to do all these things of redistricting, and it's crazy. Now to jump into some of the amendments that's on the ballot, like we have Amendment 4. We're going to start with abortion. Could you just explain what Amendment 4 is to the listeners?
Absolutely. Amendment 4 is the putting back into the Constitution this ultimate right of privacy, this decision to make a choice on your own. So it's abortion, and it is making that the legislature cannot put any laws in the book that are going to hinder a woman's access to reproductive health care, to get access to an abortion. It does not override the other part of our Constitution and statutes of parental rights, with a somebody under the age. And it doesn't get rid of the current, the 24 hours that is in our Constitution or in statutes, but it is to make sure that, in fact, 6-week abortion ban goes away, and that the Republican legislature can never come back in. And it goes back to the Roe test, which is viability. And viability is defined on proximity and body and doctors. And that's why I have consistently said, and everybody else on this issue, this is an intimate conversation between a patient and their doctor and whoever they want to pray to. But this is not a conversation that should be happening between people in Tallahassee and the patient. This should not be a conversation that should be happening in Washington, D.C. This needs to be between the patient and their doctor. And so this Amendment 4 is exactly that. It puts that right to privacy back into the Constitution.
And my question for you is, if the governor, like the last time we spoke, he didn't because we knew he was going to run for president, but he didn't want to come out to speak about the abortion, what his side of it was, or what he wanted to come out with. He just recently started doing it more and more. But if to me, that kind of showing that they know it's morally wrong what they're thinking of doing. But you've already spoken about a little bit, but what's their thinking or reasoning, or these think tanks that they do to stop abortion, to put their hands on what the woman and the doctor, or a family and a doctor, should be speaking about? What's their reasoning?
So it's a couple of things. What's the irony is that if you actually do some history on this, pro-life, anti-abortion movement, it was used for politics. it was cushioned under, religion. But if you look at those who started to talk about it back in the day, the church did not condemn this. This was not something that was coming out of religious leaders. It eventually became religious leaders because they saw this as a tool for getting the base energized and to help with voter turnout and electoral successes. So there is now ingrained in kind of the far right of the party, one, that it is a political rallying cry for, some of the religious right, who've now adopted this, that life begins at conception kind of thought process, that they've tried to use, when a heartbeat starts, that is life. And so that is what, and they've seen that from the Republican base, and let's take MAGA out of the conversation, but like the traditional conservative Republican base, that this is one of those issues that they can go rally around. And so this was something that they never really thought that the overturning of Roe would actually really happen. So this was, the dog catching his tail and now don't know what to do. And they've been so used to these talking points for 50 plus years that they don't know how to move away from it. And now they've got this nuance like, well, is it states' rights? Well, I'm sorry, states' rights. Here in the state of Florida, 77% of Floridians didn't want a 6-week abortion ban, but yet because of the supermajority and no statewide elected Democrats, they were able to jam this through with no real checks and balances. And instead of knowing that like the people in the state of Florida didn't want it, they didn't care. They still pushed it through. And I think that now, and DeSantis knew it was wrong. He signed this bill in literally the middle of the night. And anybody who's watched anything about DeSantis, he has fanfare, like he does, he pees in the wrong direction. He'll have a press conference about it. Like that is his thing. And yet this huge, like 6-week abortion ban, you sign literally like midnight with only handmaid tales around you. Like that is literally what he did. And very infrequently even talks about it on the campaign trail because he knew his advisors all told him that this went too far. It ultimately cost him, for multiple other reasons, like he has no personality and he can't make eye contact with anybody. And he is super awkward and his policies are extreme and make no rational sense. He went after Disney and the list can go on, is not going to be president of the United States. So, but this issue alone really made his electability across the country just impossible. And I think that he made a grave mistake.
Now you spoke on, we're going to go to the next amendment. You spoke on the majority voting. We voted, I want to say, what was it, 2016? We voted to pass marijuana. What year was it? It was 2016.
We didn't vote enough in 2014 and 2016. We got some edible. Yeah,
we got it. And you were the agriculture commissioner that pushed it and pushed it ahead. Now, at one point, I thought I heard him say he'll be okay with the governor. He'll be okay with marijuana. But then I guess when it started getting big and the noise started getting louder, then you start really hearing his side about marijuana. But that was during the time when he was running for president. So he was trying to look cool to the cool guys. But now he's kind of backtracking his statements. What's his big thing on marijuana?
I have said this. I don't think he gets it. Like, I just legitimately don't think he understands and he doesn't get it, because I watched in 2019 where so many of you also saw, he had this big press conference with John Morgan and Matt Gaetz and that he was going to drop the lawsuit on smokable flower and he was going to break up the monopolies and on and on and on. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the stench is too much. And if an amendment passes, we're going to start seeing people carrying like 10 to 20 joints into elementary schools and into restaurants. And I'm like, I don't know about you, man, but I certainly have never been to a legalized state where people are just carrying like 20 joints in their purse and just decide to light it up in the middle of a restaurant. And then he was saying statements of like, all of these states that have legalized it, they just have all these problems. Says not one single governor of any of those states, have certain states like done it better than others. Some states have created a much larger illegal market because they've overtaxed the products, or they've destroyed the medical program, or they have there's all these other problems of how they've expanded it and how they've created the program. But at the end of the day, there's no state that goes, you know what, that billion extra dollars of taxable revenue, I think we're going to send it back.
Well, what's the federal stance? I know the federal government is thinking about go ahead and legalizing it. And I know that that's to combat against the states that don't want to legalize it. What's the federal stance? Do you think it's going to go ahead and be passed?
So here's something interesting. So the president, I've had numerous conversations with him in the administration about moving the ball forward when it comes to the federal positioning, including suing. I think that we've talked about this too, that I sued the Department of Justice when it comes to medical patients' ability to purchase a firearm. And so that is now interestingly in limbo on some of these other positions that are coming out from the administration and some of the court cases. And we had a really big decision 2 weeks ago from the U.S. Supreme Court on a case called Rahimi that was on a gun rights case that will have direct impact on this issue. So when it comes to the administration, the president has, first really moved forward on wanting to pardon everybody who has a federal marijuana offense, which, as we know, is not in the grand scheme of things where the big problem is. Most of that is really at the state level, not the federal level. Has also said that no one else should be going to jail or to prison for cannabis, and has actually come out a couple months ago on the rescheduling. So scheduling from a controlled substance of Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. And so that is, and I, in fact, was on calls earlier today. Now that I'm on the normal board, that's something that actually we talk a lot about, and what are the next steps on any of those. It's going to be complicated. That a lot of the alphabet soup, whether it's FDA, USDA, DEA, DOJ, DOD, all of the alphabet soups are going to have to figure out, including the military, how to deal with a rescheduling. And unfortunately, my biggest concern for any of the attorneys out there that watched the other Supreme Court case that came out last week, which was the Chevron case, which gave significant deference to regulatory agencies to make rules that, take the congressional statutes, the federal statutes and what Congress's actions are, and then letting the agencies implement that. What they're saying now, if it is not black and white in the law, the agencies are really handicapped. And I am a little concerned that based on the Chevron decision last week, that this administration is going to have some issues actually rescheduling it without congressional action.
I got you, man. Now I'm going to go ahead and ask you about the elephant in the room. This is what everybody's asking me about the debate last week. So what was your opinion of the debate last week?
As somebody who has been in the rooms with Joe Biden on numerous occasions, whether it was, when I was running in 2018 to when he was running in 2020, to Surfside, to Hurricane Ian in 2022, to his trips here. I have really spent a lot of time with the president. And so Thursday night was hard to watch. Because, and you've come to admire and to have such affection towards a man, and to watch him struggle, because that was a struggle, was hard to watch. And so, there has been a lot of, obviously chatter that's happened afterwards about, replacing Joe and on and on and on. Here's the reality. A 90-minute debate does not sum up, one, what he's been able to accomplish, and not only his 3.5 years as president, but also what he's been able to accomplish in his life of service to this nation. Does not erase the vision that he created for us in the State of the Union address, the vision that he put out there. That doesn't change that. And I do believe that, you see the difference between him in a debate, and to even how he spoke at the watch party afterwards, and he came the next day out on the campaign trail, and you saw visibly two different people.
There's two different people.
Two different people. And so my, somebody who's been on those debate stages before, somebody who understands how prep happens, debates are hard, no matter who you are, no matter how well versed you are, no matter how many years you've been in a courtroom and you're used to dealing with that, debates are hard. And if you are no longer, that was never really your skill set, or B, as time goes on, it is harder to continue having that skill set. The format was not good for him, but do I believe that Joe Biden can be a fighter for us as the people, to be continuing to be that beacon of hope and light, not just for Americans, but for truly the world, as we're seeing the world imploding in other parts of the world. And so I do, I hear it, I see it, I felt it. But at the end of the day, 90 days doesn't erase what Joe Biden has done, who he has done. And then look at the alternative. Donald Trump spent 90 minutes lying about everything. And if he wasn't lying, he was either A, not taking responsibility for actions that he took when he was president, or took rewards for, and for accountability for things that he didn't even do. In fact, it was Obama who signed some of the veteran plans that he bragged about. That happened during the Obama administration. That the existential threat of Donald Trump, that America should be on the, I would vote for a Joe Biden who is, being wheeled onto a stage before I'm going to let a Donald Trump become president of the United States. And the rulings from the Supreme Court yesterday solidified how much is on the line in this election. That if Trump was to get back into the White House, one, he may never leave. He literally has said that. He would be a dictator on day one. And as we've seen in history, dictators on day one are dictators on day 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that we are really in a situation where they want to destroy all of our institutions, the courts, the executive branch, the power of the legislature. We will be in a constitutional crisis. And I think that everybody, regardless if you like Joe Biden, you don't like Joe Biden, you think he's too old, he's too young, whatever your personal beliefs are about Joe Biden, the end of the day is he has to get reelected, because the alternative is so dangerous to all of us.
Yeah, this is going off. I just watch a lot of politics, but just hearing that his son is now getting involved in politics, the former President Trump, his son is getting involved in it now, and it's kind of like, okay, I see exactly what you're about to do, and that's what kind of worries me a lot. Just to wrap it up a little bit, what are some elections that you're looking at in the state of Florida, or the Democratic Party is looking at in the state of Florida?
So one, we've got to reelect Daniela Levine Cava, who is the mayor of Miami-Dade. She is the first female mayor of Miami-Dade. So making sure that she is reelected. Our goal is August in the primary, but certainly she, if she doesn't make it to the 50% in August, she certainly will get across the finish line in November. We have 2 congressional seats that we are really monitoring. That's one's in St. Pete, Tampa area. That's Congressional District 13. We also have Congressional District 27. Both those current positions are being held by MAGA women who are embarrassments to our country and to our state. So those are 2 congressionals. We have a really, really, really important, talking about FAMU, a really important Senate district seat up here in the Panhandle, SD3. Where we have Daryl Parks, who is a past student body president from FAM, twice actually. He always wants to remind me that he was student body president twice, and I say, good job. So he is running up here in the Panhandle in Leon County and our surrounding counties here. And that is a Biden +5 seat, is a Democratic seat, and I want it back. And we've got a whole handful of other down ballot House races that we fundamentally believe were always ours. We lost them in 22, but we're going to get them back. There is also 2 really important state attorneys races. Another illegal action and unconstitutional action by the governor removed Andrew Warren and then Monique Burrell. So that's Orange County and Osceola County, that's Monique, and Hillsborough is Andrew. Those two have got to get reelected back to their state attorney positions. So those are things that we're also monitoring. And of course, the U.S. Senate race. We got to get rid of Rick Scott. And so we are seeing polling that shows that Rick is vulnerable. He's always vulnerable. But we have to make sure that we are calling out all of his policy positions that have hurt our state and the people of our state, and to finally turn the tides and get Rick out of here.
True that, man. True that. Now, Nikki, this just popped in my head. Are you in contact with Stacey Abrams at all?
Yeah, and in fact, a couple of weeks ago, so her campaign manager and I have become friends over the years too. And so I was just at a conference with her end of last month. But yeah, we all look, those of us that are in the grassroots trenches, we all want to share stories, success stories, things that worked, things that didn't work, and continue giving hope for those of us that are coming from the positions that we're in here in Florida.
Yeah, I see what you're doing. That's kind of like the same thing she did up in Georgia. And to another question that just popped in my head too. I'm talking with my wife the other day. What is Kamala's job looking to be a little bit more and being more outward in the next term?
Yeah, I mean, it's and Kamala is also, I've spent a lot of time with her too, and I love her energy. I love her vision, and she just talks also very frankly. Like, she'll tell you how it is. I do think that you're seeing an elevated presence of her not only on the campaign trail but also in the administration. She's gone overseas representing the country. She has been a forefront of talking about the success of Black businesses and Black votes. But also she has been the forefront of, she came immediately to Florida after the asinine comments from DeSantis regarding of Black slavery. She's also been a fierce fighter when it comes to reproductive freedom and healthcare. So she has been on the trail, and she's been a great spokesperson. I do believe that in the next 4 years, you will see a lot more of her. They probably will give her more in the weeds kinds of things, and including cannabis. She has always talked about legalization, and I know where she is on this issue, and certainly she would take a very proactive role in the next administration of the rollout, if in fact we get to a point that we are the rescheduling.
That's perfect, man. That's perfect. And just a last real uncut before we get off, make a not a plea, but just a statement to the voters to go out and look at the Democratic Party and what the Democratic Party has to offer.
Absolutely. I certainly would, recommend to everybody, first of all, for your voters, one, check that you are still registered. They did a really atrocious voter suppression law in 22 that has forced close to 1 million Democrats on the inactive list. So make sure that you are going onto SOE's website to make sure that you're active. Make sure that you're re-enlisted in vote by mail, because again, in December of 2022, everybody's vote by mail requests have been wiped out and canceled by the Republicans. So everybody's got to get back on there if you have ever voted by vote by mail, and that's an avenue that you choose to. And then overall, look what we fight for. Look at who we fight for, the issues that we fight for. Property insurance, number one issue. Democrats are in the forefront talking about the issues and coming up and proposing solutions. Number two issue is general affordability in our state. That's everything from healthcare access, Obamacare. Florida is the number one state for Obamacare. Number one. The top two cities in the entire country are in South Florida. One is in Central Florida, but one's South Florida, one's in Central Florida. It is Democrats that are doing everything to make sure that the affordability of our state, that we move the ball forward, that our teachers, that our kids are actually being taught by teachers and not substitute teachers. We have a huge teacher shortage. We have to make sure that our teachers are getting paid better, that we're protecting our small businesses, that the big monopolies aren't coming in and absorbing all of the small businesses and the actions that are here. We've got to make sure we've got criminal justice reform. Look, all the issues that are really, really important to the people of this state, the Democrats are on the forefront fighting for you and fighting back. And certainly look at, your local candidates, look at your local electeds, and yeah, take the Democratic Party, take another look at us here in the state. We have a broad coalition, and I say consistently, I'm wearing the shirt, Take Back Florida. You don't see this saying turn Florida blue. It's take it back, because it is for all of us. It is not just for Democrats. It's Democrats, it's independents, it's the moderate or conservative Republicans that are so angry that the MAGA extremism has taken over their party. So we're building a big tent that really encompasses everybody into this party. Everybody's got a seat at the table, and hopefully everybody is seeing what the Democratic Party, not just here across the state, but across the country, is doing to fight for democracy, for freedoms, for economic opportunities, and to make sure that we've got a good playing field as we are building our businesses.
And are you kind of using this job, this newly appointed job last year, as like a test to see when you run for the governor next?
What I have said, and I say this consistently, I love the state. I love the state. My family, my parents were born and raised here. My sister is raising her family here. I love the state, every aspect of it. I have lived in Miami. I have lived in Broward. My family lives now in Palm Beach. I've lived in Alachua County. I've lived in Leon. I have lived in Duval. I love this state. And so in order for us to have democracy and balance back into the state, we have to have a Democratic Party that is in the fight. And so it doesn't matter, like, if we can't rebuild this party, there are no statewide elected Democrats in the future. And so I am absolutely laser focused on what the job is at hand now. And future elections may come and go, and my decisions on future runs are in the future. Today, I've got a job to do.
Amen to that, man. What song do you want to end it off with, man?
As Gator Nation, I will always go back to my walk on and walk off song, which is "Don't Back Down." Won't back down from Tom Petty. That's my go-to, and that's the, I guess, the symbol of my life.
I got you, man. Once again, man, Nikki, I really appreciate you for always just answering my emails when I email you, man. I really appreciate that.
Of course, and it was good seeing you too, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you again soon, and maybe it's walking through town, but thanks for all that you do.
Anytime. Before we get off, I'll go ahead and end this episode, but we can talk real quick afterwards. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all for watching another episode of Smoke Screen Podcast featuring Nikki Fried, the chair of Florida Democratic Party. And Nikki, Normal, real quick, if you could just say what Normal is.
Yeah, NORML is the National Organization of Reform of Marijuana Laws. So it has been in existence longer than I've been alive, and it's just an honor to be on there. But they are a grassroots organization across the country that is pushing for the legalization and reform of marijuana laws.
Excellent, man. So y'all go check that out, man. And once again, I appreciate y'all for tuning into another episode.